Hi, everyone, and thanks to all of you. This Earthfiles channel weekly broadcast has now broken through 162,000 viewers. That thrills me. And our goal is to reach 175,000 by the spring equinox on March 20th, 6 weeks from now. So would all of you tonight who aren't subscribers, please put your finger on that little red rectangle in the lower right of your screen that says subscription, or wherever you see the red subscribe button, and tell everyone you know to subscribe to Earthfiles. It would be thrilling to open up a bottle of champagne again on the March equinox with all of you around the world. I would love to have more and more and more people coming from every country, everywhere, even in another language that I can run through Google Translate. It would be thrilling. I try to bring you important news from around the whole world, our solar system, the Milky Way galaxy, and beyond in this universe of trillions of galaxies. And I want to show you, since you all have been growing up with chocolate and fluffy, this big guy, I'm gonna hold him up so you can see how big. Look at this guy. He is so huge. And now, because this winter, he has put on this fur coat. And tomorrow he has to go and have it shaved, because with cats like this, you have to do that to protect them. They can get ulcers on their skin. And then next Wednesday, you're going to see a kitty. He's going to look like half of his size. So that's why I wanted you to be able, I have to stand up to show you how big he is. Oh, I love you. You can go find Fluffy, bring Fluffy back. You know, right now on Earth, it is the COVID pandemic mutating variants that are a scary threat. England and Wales have recorded, quote, the second highest weekly coronavirus deaths since the pandemic began more than a year ago. The reason is the more contagious Kent mutation variant that has been raging like a wildfire. By January 22nd, 45.1% of all deaths in England and Wales were caused by COVID. That's almost half. And a new UK study reports that, quote, 1 in 8 recovered coronavirus patients die within 140 days or 5 months, close quote. Further, of all COVID patients hospitalized, a third are readmitted to hospitals within weeks, close quote. About 1.3 million Americans each day now have been receiving a COVID vaccine, but so far less than 2% of the United States has been fully vaccinated versus England, where about 7% of the total population has now been vaccinated there. In the United States, COVID case counts have gone down since November, but deaths remain near record levels as we go into February. Just since New Year's Day, nearly 100,000 Americans have died. Unfortunately, the current vaccines and the monoclonal antibody treatment are not working as effectively against the new and evolving mutated coronaviruses of South Africa, Brazil, Kent, and California. Even those keep changing and spreading around the world. Now medical experts think the UK Kent variant is going to surge in the United States over this spring into the summer. That is what provoked epidemiologist Michael Osterholm, PhD, and director of the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota, to tell Meet the Press this past Sunday, quote, we are going to see something like we have not seen yet in this country. I see that a hurricane category 5 or higher is 450 miles offshore. And telling people to evacuate on that nice blue sky day is going to be hard. But I can also tell you that hurricane is coming, close quote. And the hurricane he means is the coming surge of the more infectious COVID mutations. So we've all got to help each other. We've got to help each other stay even more protected, always wearing masks wherever you go, using hand sanitizers, rubber gloves on your hands, and keeping distance from others is the biggest help that we can give each other and this whole world. But you know something? In spite of the depressing COVID, there is also the excitement of 3 countries from Earth that will soon be reaching Mars. First up is the United Arab Emirates HOPE spacecraft, scheduled to insert itself into orbit around Mars on February 9th, next week. That will be the 50th anniversary that the UAE was founded. The HOPE orbiter is expected to gather data for at least a full Martian year, which is 687 Earth days. Its mission is to study the dynamics of the Martian atmosphere and weather, and to study hydrogen and interplanetary dust around Mars. And then, after the HOPE landing, the very next day on February 10th, China's first Mars explorer craft, Tianwen-1, will go into orbit. The name Tianwen means questions to heaven. The spacecraft will remain orbiting around Mars for a few weeks until the month of May. And then, in an unprecedented maneuver, Tianwen-1 will be disconnected from the orbiter to drop toward the red planet, where a parachute will slow it down above the impact basin of Utopia Planitia, the biggest basin in the Martian northern hemisphere. The lander will fire its thrusters to hopefully avoid a hard landing, and if successful, the lander will release its rover to explore with scientific instruments, including a radar that can detect pockets of water beneath the Martian surface that might contain life. The orbiter will still be going around the Martian poles and will keep receiving data from the Tianwen rover to send back to Chinese scientists on Earth. And then, finally, will come the 3rd Earth spacecraft to explore Mars. That is our United States Perseverance rover, scheduled to be put down in the Jezero crater on February 18th, 2021, after China and the UAE. NASA TV will broadcast live from Mission Control beginning at 11:15 a.m. Pacific on February 18th, which is 1:15 p.m. East Coast, and all other time zones. You can watch it all at nasa.gov/NASA Live. And here is a glimpse of what will be happening. As we get closer to each of these dates, I'll do news updates at my earthfilesnews.com website to keep you all posted about any new and maybe unexpected developments of 3 nations from Earth on Mars at the same time. And another newsworthy event coming up this Saturday, February 6th, is a virtual variety show called Saturday Night Alive for the Global Peace Tribe, and the subject is making contact with other intelligences. I will be one of the speakers along with Whitley Strieber, Grant Cameron, and many others, including music and a magician. And you can register to attend this virtual event this coming Saturday by going to www.globalpeacetribe.com. The title of this virtual event comes from a new book that will be released May 4th, 2021 by St. Martin's Press, entitled Making Contact, Preparing for the New Realities of Extraterrestrial Existence. This new book is a collection of essays edited by Alan Steinfeld. He hosts the YouTube channel New Realities, Making Known the Unknown. Alan is also a UFO experiencer himself. You can pre-order by going to Amazon.com and search for Making Contact, edited by Alan Steinfeld, and click on pre-orders. This new book explores many aspects of consciousness, UFOs, spirituality, and quantum physics. The contributors include myself, Whitley Strieber, Grant Cameron, Nick Pope, Mary Rodwell, Carolyn Corey, JJ and Desiree Hertak, and a special unpublished essay before now by Dr. John Mack, the Harvard University psychiatrist who took the human abduction syndrome very seriously. And okay, now you guys, let's have some fun with Q&A for the rest of this broadcast. And as we announced, we are going to do a lightning round of questions tonight. And I have this, it's a champagne bell. Here, I'll let you hear what it sounds like. You hit it from above. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bell and pass it to my dear colleague, Brad. And now he will have control of the bell. And what we're going to do is start out with a first question that I knew and wanted to react to with some personal insight and more information than I could cram in 2 minutes, which will be a challenge for me for the rest of the show. But opening up, I'm going to go a little longer on this because I have some graphics that I would like to show you. And Ian, let's start off now with that first question.
Good evening, Linda. I'm just going to say thank you to the audience for the super chats. So thank you very much to Jerry, Tobias, Sexy Sadie, Melissa, Quirkness. There's a few others that I've probably missed, but I want to say thank you anyway. But I'm going to go right into the questions now. And the first question comes from Marco. Linda, what do you think of William Bramley's Gods of Eden book?
I'm going to pick it up. I have had this since it came out in 1989. That was the year that my first book, An Alien Harvest, was released, and William Bramley, an attorney in Los Angeles who had worked on this book for a very long time, the book released, and he and I ended up being at conferences together, and we had deep, deep conversations. His book is The Gods of Eden. And when you go to chapter 18 for an example, it is titled The Black Death. And this is about what was known as the bubonic plague that affected Europe. And I will give you some statistics to think about where we are right now in the global pandemic of COVID. And here is what was happening in the years 1347 to 1350 in Europe. The Black Death began in Asia and soon spread to Europe, where it killed well over 25 million people, which was then about 1/3 of Europe's total population. All of those deaths happened in 4 years between 1347 and 1350. Now, when you go to page 202, and I'm stressing this chapter, and hope that all of you will get this book, The Gods of Eden by William Bramley. I had by then been exposed to a great deal about the idea of UFOs and aliens and ETs being some sort of a control system, an idea that had been presented by people such as Jacques Vallée and John Keel, that we were unwitting to the fact that the Earth was in a control system. And when you go to page 202, Brad, if you will bring up, this is the graphic that Bill put there. And he said, here is in the book, quote, "Here is unusual aerial phenomena reported in European skies during the centuries in which the bubonic plague struck. Above is an illustration of strange spheres observed flying over Basel, Switzerland during the months of July and early August in 1566. They were described by one eyewitness as large black spheres which raced toward the sun and then turned toward each other as though engaged in combat." You go a couple of pages over to page 206, and here is another fascinating woodcut. "During the plague years, mysterious figures and demons were often reported entering villages and towns. They would knock or sweep at people's doors with long instruments, which were often thought of as scythes or swords." And in fact, Bill and I talked about where the black figure with a scythe called the figure of death came from. It came from this plague in 1347 to 1350, and these are the kinds of woodcuts and illustrations that people made then. And about these demons, they would knock or sweep at people's doors with these long instruments, and the demons' actions would cause the people in those households to immediately contract the plague. This illustration was printed in 1508 in Cologne, Germany. It is an artist's concept of one of those demons. Note that the demon has pointed his deadly instrument toward the window of a home as though to inject something into the home. At the very top of this illustration, those words that are hard to read mean, "Knock, devil, knock." Now, I wanted to go into a little deeper on the Gods of Eden because of all of the work that I have known authors. It was Bill Bramley's well-sourced, amazingly well-sourced, indexed, tremendous appendices as an attorney. And what was it that provoked him to do this book? He told me, "I just wanted to see if I could find a common thread to all of the wars of history going back to the days of Alexander." And he said, the deeper I got, and Linda, I was getting documents from Oxford University. I was dealing with all sorts of classics departments. I was really trying to get original documents. And he said, after a while, all roads kept leading to strange things in the skies and a common denominator of disease and wars, that he, William Bramley, the attorney, concluded that those two factors were symptoms of a control system by something that was associated with all of the UFOs that were described through centuries. Now, that is not necessarily ominous. means, though, that an attorney setting out to find out why there are so many wars on Earth and finds all of these UFO stories going back through centuries and centuries and centuries related to things like plagues and war, it raised a question that a lot of us have asked each other. Does all of Earth life, if we knew the whole truth, have more to do with the recycling of our souls than we've ever been taught or know as humans? That was the final depth of the discussions with William Bramley. So, The Gods of Eden. If you can find this hardcover, get it, whatever form. I hope that you will read that book. Now, with that, I am going to be constrained to Brad hitting that bell. And here we go, Ian. What's the next question?
Here's another question that follows on from your report earlier. A viewer asks, what may we find on Mars?
Well, for those of you who were here 3 or 4 weeks ago, I did an interview with John Brandenburg, who wrote the book, The Death on Mars, or Death on Mars. And he is a nuclear physicist. He had and has evidence that we have found plutonium-244 and xenon-129 in amounts on Mars that were picked up by Viking and later, and that the only way that you can get those levels of plutonium-244 is with a hydrogen bomb or a star that blows up. And so in his book, Death on Mars, John Brandenburg hypothesizes that when we go to a Mars officially, which I hope that Elon Musk is going to do with a successful launch leaving in 2024, that it will turn into, if they don't already know, and maybe have already been up there through some other vehicle, that Cydonia in the northern hemisphere of Mars is going to have a lot of underground archaeology. That's John Brandenburg's prediction. His book is extremely persuasive, and you have to step back and say, what would create plutonium-244 in Mars along with xenon-129 when that is not going to happen outside of the context of fission and a hydrogen bomb? So that's going to definitely, I think, be one of those subjects. I made it! I made it! Wow. Now I know what it feels like to answer in 2 minutes.
Well done, Linda. I've got another question for you. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, here's a question from 65 Davy Boy. What is your opinion on Charles Hall's story that while he worked at Area 51 in Nevada, that he met tall whites in the 1960s?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'd like to share. I met Charles Hall at an sort of like a mini conference in Albuquerque about 8-9 years ago. And he had done a presentation about some aspects of what he said as a person working in a Nevada military unit, that they were exposed to the presence of tall whites, 7 to 8 feet tall, skin the color of this, like white paper, and long shoulder length hair. I got the impression that it was a bit scraggly, and that they were there under an agreement with the US government. And in the process of that discussion, he said, and they have the ability, if they so choose, to kill a human with their mind. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we were really educated and we were warned. We had to do military surveillance and security where the tall whites, or the unit that he was in at that time, is the story. And he said you had to be extremely careful about the boundaries of their territory, especially if they had children. And he said, I was there the day that one of my colleagues was simply doing walk across an area of the tall whites' territory. And children appeared. It's not clear how or why, but children appeared, tall white children. And the man who was moving went to the ground and he was dead on the ground. And one last sentence. It was not clear why, and all they knew is that they had an agreement and that this fell into a category of self-protection by the tall whites in territory granted to them by Homo sapiens sapiens. Okay, I almost made it. All right, now question number 3.
Hi, Linda. Okay, we've got several questions asking about Antarctica. Greg and Lindsay, for example, are asking certain questions. Any updates on Antarctica? And also, do you think that the base in Antarctica described by Spartan 1 and 2 is abandoned or probably still populated?
The answer I'm going to give is not from information from Spartan 1 or 2. It comes from another Navy SEAL who watched everything in my documentary, Antarctica, Alien Secrets Beneath the Ice, told me that what Spartan 1 was describing as his firsthand testimony was what we'll call him SEAL 3. What SEAL 3 was saying to me was all true and he knew. Here's what SEAL 3 added. He had been to the huge architecture, said some of the ceilings in the rooms, like Spartan 1 said that one of the rooms that he entered was 13 acres. SEAL 3 said that the ceilings could be up 80 feet, measured by laser, without support beams. And the assumption was that the ceilings were kept in place by something that neutralized gravity. And in that context, 3 times to this location, 2 miles, he went to one place that was deeper than 2 miles, the SEAL 3. But in one of the missions, they had picked up, there was some sort of strange electromagnetic frequency that was coming from deep below the ice. So they had satellites above, communication. SEAL 3 is with a mission, men. I think that there was 11 of them. And he said they entered one of those long, long halls that Spartan 1 tried to describe and tried to draw, that had the light that comes out of the wall. And something came out of the walls, scared them, affected their minds. They had no idea what it was. And they asked the same question to their higher authority. Are these holograms? Are these robots? Are they life down here? What is it? To this day, there is no answer on what was in that hall that SEAL 3 encountered, but something is still there, even if it is triggered by moving in some walls. Okay, thank you, Brad. You're doing this very well.
Okay, Linda, I have another question here. Richard asks, in recent years, there have been many reports in the news and also many people hearing it about the strange and loud noises in the sky. Nowadays, we hear nothing about it in the news, and there seem to be no reports from people themselves anymore. Did it just stop?
I'm I am so glad to get this question, because I would like to urge all of you to also go to my Earthfiles news website that I have been doing since 1999 to this day. There are about 3,000 in-depth reports. They are in science, environment, and real X-Files. This booms and strange sounds would now be archived, and my site is 120 days totally free for science and environmental reports at all times. And then it goes into the archive. And in order to do this work at all and pay bills, you have to have some kind of a subscription. My science and environment don't start for 120 days after. Real X-Files, to protect a child from, I don't want children to stumble into, or anybody to stumble into, animal mutilations and other things. So that's also behind a subscription wall, but I'm laying the groundwork that the archive that now has 3,000 reports in it, it's worth it. It's like having a digital encyclopedia in science, environment, and real X-Files. And the booms go back to 2011 is when I started getting reports. And I did a search just before we came on air tonight. I have 199 boom reports. That doesn't even include all of the strange metal sounds. 199 boom reports. And in the year 2020 that we just came out of, I have 7 in-depth reports about the boom phenomena that ranges from the United States to other places. So get used to going to earthfiles.com for cross-pollination. Things that I talk about here, I sometimes do reports there. And this huge, huge archive of Earthfiles has so many of the boom reports and those that are current as of 2020. Great question. I do think that the indication is that booms and sounds will go on into 2021, because I have been getting some reports. But I like the reports where there's a recording. Just know there are recordings of booms at Earthfiles. Okay, Ian.
Okay, Linda. Tim asks, is there any correlation of radiation levels, landing sites, abductees, and recovered nanomaterials and animal mutilations?
I understand the question. It is an interesting question. I guess what is lacking is that there hasn't been any public organized investigation with the right equipment to try to look for various frequencies, radiation, whatever might be at various sites. And what would be the common denominator if you could find any one or two frequencies or things present between animal mutilations, a house of human abductions, of places where there have been crop formations, where another place where somebody has had orbs in their yard or in their house. All of those, it would be interesting. Now, one of the things that comes to mind was that Project Condign that John Burroughs, Nick Pope, and I read through and helped for doctors to understand that what was wrong with John Burroughs after we got back from England on the 30th anniversary in New Year's Eve of 2011. We were there the last week of 2010. And we were home only 3 weeks, and John Burroughs became extremely ill. He was hospitalized. His lungs were filling up with water. It was very confusing to all, but I remember John saying, you know how we all were on that same land, and the crew from Ancient Aliens and I were following Jim and John wherever they felt like they were drawn in Rendlesham Forest trying to find where back in December 26th to 28th, 1980, had they been when there was the explosion of light and the big black diamond. We were all over land they thought might match. And John said, could it be that whatever the frequencies were in 1980 are still there because something's underground, or there is something about the forest that is still there, and it ended up, this is a hypothesis of John Burroughs, that whatever the frequencies were there, and we measured some in a tri-field meter repeatedly, could it have damaged or increased damage to his heart that may have been damaged by terahertz frequencies back in December 1980. Terahertz is definitely associated with the UFO phenomena, but there are other ingredients, and it would be great to have a huge science team that could go to phenomena, but each of us has done what we can, and it's a good question, and John, what happened to John may be an insight about terahertz frequencies being ever present. Okay, another one.
Okay, Linda. Ken asks, Linda, do you think that the CIA was created because of Roswell? It seems too much of a coincidence that both were created that both happened in 1947, but nobody ever talks about it.
That's true, and I think it is so significant. I made some notes about that. Last week, I had John Greenwald on to talk about his document for you, and we've got 6 months or 180 days that'll be at the end of June for the alleged clock for the Secretary of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence to bring forth information to Congress, to the legislatures who were responsible for inserting in the COVID relief bill 2 sections about unidentified aerial phenomena, advanced aerial threats, and foreign adversaries. Those are the 3 themes in which the Secretary of Defense and the DNI are asked to submit information, at least to Congress and hopefully to the public. Okay, now with that as current, the CIA was signed into existence by President Harry S. Truman on September 18th, 1947. That was only a few weeks after the several crashes that happened in the Roswell area, Socorro area, in Magdalena. There were many things that happened in the summer of 1947. And so, yes, without question, in my mind, without question in Stanton Friedman's mind, we used to talk about this. The September 18th, 1947 creation of the CIA was President Harry S. Truman's effort to come up with, and here is one of the, this is the September 24th, 1947, President Truman authorizing Secretary of Defense James Forrestal, quote, to proceed with all due speed and caution to create Operation Majestic 12, which was classified scientists, military, and business professionals handpicked by President Truman to specifically advise him on UFOs and ETs. So you're only 1 week apart on the creation of the CIA and Majestic 12. All right, onward.
Okay, I've got another question here from John and Craig, and I think probably 1 or 2 others. People are interested to know, have you had any more recent reports or updates or contacts from witnesses regarding the so-called Carrot and Dragonfly drone mysteries?
Yeah, that is a good question. We're going back to 2007-ish, 2008 time period. And that is when a man who submitted to me and to Coast a document or pages of documents with photographs having to do with things that were shaped like a dragonfly, here like this with a tail, that I had first reported on Earthfiles, and Coast was also reporting illustrations, photographs that were coming from the public in that time period with question marks that included these kinds of common observations. I was hiking in the forest with my son. We all of a sudden, treetop level, it looked like sort of like a dragonfly with wires coming up, like a fountain of wires from the head, trailing back. And then it flicked out. It disappeared right in front of us. That was, to me, that was the first signal that if a lot of people in different parts of the country are seeing and describing the same strange dragonfly shape, and several of them are reporting that they see it flicker in and out or completely disappear, or a couple of cases, they see it appear like it dissolves in. We're not dealing with just run-of-the-mill aviation. Well, over a period of time, this man who had submitted, he called himself Isaac. The document that he sent to me and to Coast and I think above top secret has been studied by a couple of scientists that I know, and they think that this was legitimate information. Where Isaac went is the same underground technology that he was familiar with that was being developed underground in Palo Alto, California, Menlo Park. Is it still ongoing? That's the question, but it's important for all of you, if you want to catch yourself up on one of the most interesting stories related to a very strange technology, go to Earthfiles, type in my search bar, just type in Dragonfly. And I did dozens and dozens and dozens of reports. Today, you don't hear about it. That does not mean it's not there and still coming in and out of invisibility. So, thanks, Ian. Go on to another.
This is a great question from Susie. She asks, do the physically disabled ever get abducted? And if so, are they ever abducted with their disability aids, such as wheelchair, etc.? Or do aliens only seem to abduct healthy people?
What an excellent question. My mind was racing, trying to think, have I ever had any information about someone who had disability? One thing has just popped in. It was France. This might have been a Jacques Vallée. I think this is a Jacques Vallée report a long time ago. It was a physician who had a crippled, I believe it was left foot and leg. What I can't remember is, was it a birth problem or was it from something? So I'm not sure about that, but I'm pretty sure it was the left leg that was crippled. And the physician saw a light. He was in like a house or an apartment where from his living room he could see through glass windows or doors, and he saw this light, and he was attracted toward the light out onto the balcony. And he is standing there unafraid, and he watches the light come closer, and he just stands. And then a beam comes right at him engulfed him. And then the beam retreated, and the, we'll say UFO, went away. And that man was completely and totally healed that night on that balcony in France. The same kind of thing happened. I'm thinking of another story of in South America, where a man was very old, crippled, and he's with his family. A UFO comes, a beam comes down. Not only was his crippling healed, but his white hair and disability by age, his hair went back to like he was 20 years old again. His teeth even came back. And that was also in a case so long ago that I can't remember the citation, but I do have a kind of flypaper memory. Once we start in a subject, I start remembering things that I have read. I just am not sure of the citation. Maybe somebody listening will know where that one comes from. I think, though, in general, that most people in the abduction syndrome would fall into the category of healthy. I think that's true. So I'm learning that my shortest answers are more comfortable at about 2.5 minutes. But I'll keep trying for 2. Go ahead, Ian.
Hey, another Earthfiles viewer asks, what about the chapter in Jim Mars's book, An Alien Agenda, about remote viewers and what they have found about alien origins and motives?
Yes, you know, Sci-Spies is one of my favorite subjects talking about with Jim Mars, and he and I were the best friends for so long, going all the way back when I was still working on my first book, An Alien Harvest, in I think it was, in fact, I think Jim and I talked after what was called the Animal Mutilation Conference had occurred in Colorado, and I had started working on A Strange Harvest, and it was that fall of '79, and Jim had been involved in that conference. And that was the first person doing hard investigative journalism who told me that he saw with his own eyes a 35 millimeter slide of a blue beam coming down out of a UFO onto a mutilated animal that a sheriff showed Jim. Now, that sets the stage for talking with Jim in great depth about the remote viewers that he featured in his book that came out in 2007 called Sci-Spies. And in this book, he talks with the remote viewers about what they access working in Project Stargate about UFOs and ETs. And he said, quote, when the Sci-Spies remote viewed and tracked objects back to their point of origin that were in the sky, the remote viewers found the objects came from subsurface locations on our moon and Mars and Earth. All subsurface locations, and that they would land in subsurface locations on Earth, not the surface. That's my second in sync with 2 minutes. Okay, Ian.
Well done, Linda. Knife Guy is asking, any thoughts on Phobos being an artificial moon? And did you hear anything about the last photograph taken by a Russian probe before it disappeared?
I was at a conference in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, not long after the Russian probe either disappeared, was blown up, or whatever. And Ian, what was the name? Popovich? Marina Popovich, I believe, was the Soviet or Russian.
Is it the famous Soviet cosmonaut? Yes.
And she was there at the Eureka Springs conference, and I sat right next to her, and we talked at great length about what it was that she and others in Russia had concluded about the disappearance of that probe. And she was there at that UFO conference in Eureka Springs because she was showing us and telling us that Russia had totally convincing evidence that this was a blast, or like if you had security on your planet or on your moon, that if anything foreign came and could not reply in a frequency signal that was somehow generated, it would be annihilated. Whether that's fair or not, or whether that's absolutely, but that is what the hypothesis was being described. And since that time, I have learned only more and more that would explain to me why that might be true. And that is Mars, John Brandenburg, the idea of war on Mars when it was inhabited 1 million years ago or 100 million years ago by another civilization, and that if there is archaeology in Cydonia, then it may very well be that just like this strange technology that lights walls and keeps temperatures in Antarctica on Earth, there may still be operational facilities in Mars with AI that goes out to check anything that comes. And in that case, it may be that that's what happened to the Russian probe. But we need to get to Mars. We need to have it be public. And we need to investigate and report. That's my wish, that we will stop having policies of lies and denials, that we will tell the truth. And that was Marina Popovich. That's what she felt, exactly the same way. I do not understand why this should be lied about. I remember her saying that. Okay, what about another?
Hey, Linda, this question comes from a viewer in Iceland, and it's very interesting because it just shows how people are watching you from all over the world.
Yes.
He says, I was taken through the tunnel of light all the way. I was afraid to death, but I was afraid of death. But after this trip, I am not. What do you think about this?
Oh, I love that. I would love to hear from more of you that have these experiences with the tunnel of light. For those of you who began with me on the Earthfiles YouTube channel, you know it was a couple of years ago, and I had shared for the first time with a public audience ever, which was with you guys back then, what happened when my cat Simba, it was another pair of cats that goes back about 5 years now, and he had been deteriorating. The brothers, like Chocolate and Fluffy, but they were about 18 years old then. And I knew that he was passing, and I made a decision, right or wrong, that I was going to try to be his hospice. And he reached a point where he could not walk. I had to pick him up and take him everywhere, which makes what happened so incredible. On the night in which he had not been able to eat, I had put him downstairs in a box with a comfort. So the idea would be that he wouldn't even try to go upstairs or downstairs. I wouldn't worry about him falling. And it was almost exactly 4 a.m. on the clock when I was waked up by hearing some scratches right outside of my bedroom. And I got out of bed flipped on the light and could not believe he was outside, had had to climb 2 flights of stairs. And I grabbed him up and I sat in bed with him until 8 for 4 hours, with him just as if he were saying, I am going someplace else and I'm going to leave you, but I love you. It just was like that the whole time. It felt like that. It was like telepathic. And I called my brother and I said, would you meet me at the vet at noon? I can't do this by myself. And we went through the process of having him put to sleep. And I still can remember the moment he was in my arms. I was looking at his eyes that were Simba. My brother goes with the vet. They come back in the room about 3 or 4 minutes later. And my brother laid Simba in my hands. And even the color of his eyes had changed. And I said out loud, where are you? Where did you go, Simba? Where? You were right here. You were still alive. Where did you go? Like a child. I was asking the air like a child. That night, we buried him in the afternoon, that very night. Out of a sound sleep, I am waked up, and above the pillow is an oval like this. And it had navy blue here at the closest, yellow and white, light, like rays, all around. And there was Simba, his eyes glistening health. He was perfect, beautiful. And I found myself literally, I'm totally up, I'm totally awake, I'm looking at this. I can even see a spiral, a gray spiral going behind his alive body right there. It's like a tunnel going off. I can see it. And I grabbed. You're not going again. I grabbed. And then it just faded away. But like our friend from Finland, was it Finland, Ian?
Yes.
I think that is seeing the tunnel with light that is a portal, and that somehow Simba wanted to answer my question in that office in the vet. Where did you go? How could you have been here? And then where is that? What is that life force that leaves? Where does that life force go? And Simba came back and he showed me. I couldn't grab him in the matter world, but he was in another dimensional space at the end of a tunnel that ended at my pillow that night. So yes, I have no question that some part of us that we call the soul, it goes on and it goes in and out of matter bodies. And that maybe all of this, everything that happens on Earth with Homo sapiens and Earth life, is because there is a huge force, a divine field, I call it, to put all of this in motion, almost like an organic life test, experiment. And the goal is to gain as much information as possible over eons, as Roger Penrose would say, eons and eons and eons. Always recycling back through these portals to a divine field that enlarges and evolves in consciousness from all of us and all of life. And I think there is a true truth there. But I also am confused, very confused, by what seems to be in this universe the presence of entropy and darkness, always seeming to be in conflict with the light. Maybe that's part of the experiment. I want to thank everybody for, this was fun. I think I could now do this again and actually look forward to it. Ian, thank you for the questions. Dear Brad, thank you for the bell.
That's okay. I just want to clarify, Linda, the last question did actually come from a viewer in Iceland.
Iceland. I
That's
said,
it, yes.
yes. Thank you. In Iceland, every country on this planet, the soul part, the human part, not the politics or the police or the military. The soul. Let us shake hands here every Wednesday night. Help me keep expanding Earthfiles. Let's make the March equinox in 2021 break through 175,000, knowing that getting together in our voices and in our numbers and exploring some of these difficult subjects at least helps us be more flexible and hopefully stronger. That's my goal. Strength and flexibility in this revolutionary time. And on the other end, I pray that our government with other governments are finally going to start telling us the truth, the good, the bad, the ugly, about our relationship to other consciousness in this universe. And I hope you'll keep in dialogue with me here, because that's what I want to do in the Earthfiles YouTube channel. I thank you so much. I made a lot of questions, nearly in 2 minutes. I love you guys. See you next week.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC, and then select Auto Translate. Select a language, and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.